There we go. So let's get started. Human trafficking, like any human rights violation, is a complex topic. It takes on many forms, so it is important that we know them. Understanding them is the best weapon we have in the fight to end human trafficking. Now, I'll be presenting the first three forms of human trafficking, which are child sex trafficking, online exploitation or online enticement, and online exploitation child abuse materials. Then Andrea will cover the rest of the presentation. But before we dive in, I want to talk a little about Operation Underground Railroad. O.U.R's mission is to shine a light worldwide on the global epidemic of child sex trafficking, and in doing so, rescue more children from slavery and assist law enforcement to seek justice for those who violate children. While our focus remains on children, we assist survivors of all ages to bring them safety and healing. We place survivors on a path to recovery by partnering with vetted aftercare providers or by placing them with families. And O.U.R has a fantastic aftercare program. For those who don't know, our founder and president is Tim Ballard, and he was a U.S. Special Agent with the Department of Homeland Security. He worked on the border, and he has done incredible work for that agency. He's a member of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force and the U.S. Child Sex Tourism Jump Team. He left the government in 2013 to start Operation Underground Railroad. Ballard has briefed the President of the United States and is a best-selling author of Slave Stealers, True Accounts of Slave Rescues Then and Now. Human trafficking is one of the fastest growing criminal enterprises in the world. Let me tell you, $150 billion industry, 40.3 million people in various forms of trafficking and exploitation, and 25% of them are children. So, what is human trafficking? Well, according to National Human Trafficking Hotline, human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery in which traffickers use force, fraud, or coercion to control victims for the purpose of engaging in commercial sex acts and labor services against his or her will. This can include domestic servitude, sex trafficking, labor trafficking. Human trafficking is a very complex issue, and at its core, we know it as a criminal activity of buying and selling of people. Human trafficking has relatively low risks and high profits. The reason for such high profits is because of the demand, and the US is the #1 in demand. The demand for trafficked individuals is high because of the demand of buyers. And that is according to UNICEF. So you can see here on this graph, high reward, low risk, supply and demand. Human trafficking is so profitable because there is a demand from buyers. So if buyers did not exist, it wouldn't be a high profit illegal market. And according to UNICEF, the number of prosecutions is shockingly low for an industry that victimizes an estimated 21 million people around the world. Lasting legal consequences for human traffickers are still minimal and rare, and traffickers know they can sell and exploit others and little will be done to stop them.
Mm-hmm.
Child sex trafficking. Child sex trafficking has been reported in 50 states in the United States. That is according to NCMEC, and that is the National Center, excuse me, NCMEC is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Excuse me. The extent of family involvement in trafficking of children is up to 4 times higher than in cases of adult trafficking. Child sex trafficking refers to the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a minor for the purpose of a commercial sex act, according to justice.gov. A higher percentage of identified children are trafficked for exploitation than forced labor. Pimps and traffickers sexually exploit children through street prostitution and in adult clubs, illegal brothels, sex parties, motel rooms, hotel rooms, and other locations throughout the United States. Psychological manipulation is the means of control used most by traffickers on children. And in CTDC data, just over half, or 53% of male victims trafficked into sexual exploitation are children. The CTDC refers to the Counter Trafficking Data Collaborative. Sometimes when children are trafficked, their trafficker may keep them in their regular routine of attending school and going home at night. So in other situations, these kids completely miss out on receiving an education altogether. Either way, though, their education suffers due to missing out mental health and other struggles that come with healing from their trauma. Rachel was trafficked here in the United States when she was 14 years old by a man that she believed to be her boyfriend. And under the impression that he loved her, she was excited when he suggested that they plan a vacation together, right? When they arrived in the nearby state, the boyfriend, what do you think he did? Well, he immediately turned on her. He demanded that she work the streets in order to pay for her portion of the vacation. And luckily, an undercover police officer identified Rachel and helped her out of her situation. She was so traumatized from being trafficked and faces many challenges, including her mental health, dealing with her dysfunctional family and financial issues. Currently, in January 2020, O.U.R. Aftercare is providing support and consultation to Rachel's team, who is helping her improve her mental health and helping her recover from addiction. We are grateful to support strong survivors like Rachel. So what happens when a survivor isn't rescued until they are an adult? Well, another survivor, we'll call her Amanda, was rescued from trafficking when she was already past the normal high school age, right? The only way for her to complete a GED would be for someone to tutor her and help her through the GED classes and tests. And since she had little to no education during the years, she was trafficked. A GED can change the course of a survivor's life forever and help boost their confidence in themselves as they work to heal from their trauma. So with your help, we can help cover the costs of a GED program and tutor for survivors like Rachel and Amanda to support them in reaching their dreams. Freedom starts with you. We have the opportunity to give survivors something back that their traffickers so greedily took away. How traffickers recruit victims? Well, a common misconception is that recruitment tactics are always physical or violent from the beginning. But as you heard from that situation, Amanda thought her boyfriend, right, loved her. But it didn't start that way. It didn't start violent. So these are some of the things that traffickers give their victims. They give them basic needs like food and water and warmth, a bed to sleep in, a roof over their head, and they become dependent on them. They feel secure and they feel safe with them because they're giving them food and they're keeping them off the streets. And then intimate relationships, prestige and feeling of accomplishment, they trick them. Self actualism, achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. So this is how traffickers recruit their victims. They become their friends and they make them dependent on them. What can you do? Well, we have a link here and it is to a blog. It's a QR code and to a story that you can share it with friends. If you take a photo with your cell phone, you'll be able to get that link. So I'm just going to leave it up for just a second. If you'd like to take a photo of that, you just hold your camera over the QR code and then it'll take you right to that web page. And we can also put that into the chat. All right, online exploitation or online enticement. In a recent meta-analysis of CyberTip reports of online enticement, it was found that nearly all children did not know the person they were communicating with online. Sextortion takes on different forms, but at its core, it is the threat to expose sexual images in order to make a person do something. So these threats come from both strangers that they meet online and once intimate romantic partners attempting to harass, embarrass, and control their victim. And according to Thorne, sextortion is happening to kids and teens. 1 in 4 victims were 13 or younger when threatened, and 2 in 3 victims were girls threatened before the age 16. And this is why it's so important that as parents, we know what our children are doing. We need to know who they're talking to and check in with them. And the most important thing that you can do is to keep an open dialogue about this topic. Make sure that they know that you're there and that they're not alone. And if there's someone there trying to talk with them, they should let you know. And there's all kinds of ways that you can protect your children. So important to, again, keep an open dialogue and talk to your kids. Know what they're up to. So 9-year-old Ava started chatting with a boy online who seemed to be very nice and only a few years older than her. Ava grew up in an abusive environment in her home in Central America, so she turned to social media to find connections with friends, just like so many kids. After Ava and this boy had developed a little relationship online, the boy asked her for explicit pictures of her. She replied to his request. After she sent the first picture, the boy on the other end of the chat revealed who he truly was. a 70-year-old man in Florida. If you don't send me more pictures, I will post these publicly and send them to everyone you know. At only 9 years old, Ava felt like she had no other choice. She complied with his requests and sent him the pictures he wanted. Unsurprisingly, he uploaded the pictures of Ava online anyway. This predator, miles and miles away from this little girl, was still able to exploit her repeatedly. Law enforcement found the pictures that the man had uploaded and worked to identify and rescue Ava. Not only was she being exploited online, but she was being continually abused by close family members. She was placed in an aftercare home that O.U.R supports in Central America. A birthday celebration. Last month, the O.U.R aftercare team joined Ava and the other survivors in the home for Ava. They enjoyed food and music together. Ava had many ups and downs that day as she processed getting older and remembering all that she had been through. Healing is not a linear process. This man in Florida has made Ava's life incredibly difficult. We are in awe of Ava's strength and determination, and O.U.R Aftercare will continue to stand by her and support her on her healing journey. Staying safe online. 5 resources to help you navigate conversations with children, friends, and family about staying safe online. This is a great resource. I highly suggest, again, taking a photo of this QR code or copying down the URL. It's a great resource for everyone. There are thousands and thousands of predators online looking for vulnerable children to exploit. So this resource will help you to navigate and learn how to talk to your children. It's never too early to talk. I'm gonna hopefully play this video and hopefully you could hear the sound on this.
Okay, so you did a thing. You sent a picture of yourself with no clothes on. Something you thought wouldn't be shared. And in a polite society, cats wear clothes, right? Anyway, seemed like a good idea at the time, but now things have gone wrong, terribly wrong. Maybe you shared the picture with someone you loved and trusted, but after a while, things weren't so friendly. Or they said they'd help you become a star, but they just wanted to use you. Or maybe you met someone online and they really seemed to understand you, but then it got weird, and it turned out to be someone totally different. Now the person you shared the pic with is demanding more and threatening to tell. That's sextortion. Yep, that's a thing. The perpetrator relies on you feeling ashamed and keeping quiet. But they are the ones who should be ashamed. What they are doing is wrong, and it's never too late to find your voice to ask for help, or too early to reach out to your friends to tell them you'll be there no matter what. In fact, you can stop sextortion before it starts by talking about it now. With support, you can do anything, and you can focus on the important business of being cats. So tell your closest friends today you've got their back no matter what.
Thorn is doing amazing things in the fight against human trafficking. So now we're going to talk about online exploitation, or what we call CSAM, child sexual abuse material. New technologies are facilitating live streaming of sexual abuse of children using webcams or cell phones, often for profit. That's per the US Department of State. 78% of images and videos analyzed by cybertip.ca depict children under 12 years old. In 2004, NCMEC reviewed 450,000 child sexual abuse files. In 2019, they reviewed 70 million child sexual abuse files. That is just unacceptable. O.U.R's Detective Canine Spike is trained in electronic storage detection and is placed with a law enforcement handler. And he has done some amazing work seeking out these hidden devices that contain the CSAM. O.U.R has many of these dogs helping out throughout the United States. Now I want to tell you about the boy in the green shirt. This was actually written by an O.U.R operative. An O.U.R operative is someone who goes and rescues children who have been trafficked. So this is the story, the boy in the green shirt. The boy in the green shirt was an investigation that started in Southeast Asia after the police in another country found photos of an unidentified young boy in a green shirt being sexually assaulted. The offender had unique, identifiable physical traits, so local police were able to quickly identify a citizen with matching traits to this alleged offender. They requested the support of O.U.R ops team to gather additional intelligence, which may help find the young boy in the green shirt. The O.U.R ops team quickly determined that the offender was heavily involved in activities which provided him unsupervised contact with young children, such as giving art classes and music lessons. It was decided that an O.U.R operative would go undercover to befriend the offender. The O.U.R operator began integrating himself into the life of the offender by booking him for drawing lessons, which would initially take place at the offender's home. I'm the O.U.R undercover operator who befriended this offender, integrated my undercover identity into his life, and eventually gained access to not only his inner circle of friends, but to the boy in the green shirt. I will be telling this story firsthand. The first art lesson. On the very first art lesson with the offender, it was clear that he had direct access to multiple underage victims who were often seen at his home playing, swimming, and hanging out. Walking away from the offender's house following my first art lesson, leaving behind two young neighborhood boys who had come to swim with the offender, was very difficult, to say the least. I began by booking the offender for drawing lessons since he was advertising these services via his social media profile. After sitting through multiple art lessons, the offender began bringing an underage boy with him to the lesson, whom he described as a close neighborhood friend. Shortly after this meeting, the offender and I became friends on social media. The offender was seen to be heavily involved in the acting modeling industry and with contacts with agents and photographers. A pattern began to emerge where the offender would befriend a potential victim, encourage him and his family members to pursue acting and modeling, and then use his connections to book casting calls, photo shoots, etc. Once the victim and his family began trusting the offender, he would begin having unsupervised contact with the victim. All of the children that the offender was seeing interacting with in this manner were young boys between the ages of 6 and 10 years old. Once we became friends on social media, it didn't take long to find the boy in the green shirt. This boy, like many others who had unfortunately crossed paths with this offender, had been victimized and exploited while being left unsupervised with him during photo shoots and casting calls across the city. The boy in the green shirt is Simon. I started at Simon's face I stared at Simon's face for about 2 months while we did everything we possibly could to identify him. We studied and researched the clothing company of the green shirt he was seen wearing. We reviewed every single modeling photo shoot for that clothing company, which included thousands of photos of child models. None of them were Simon. My entire team of O.U.R operators pored over every single detail in the photos of Simon, including imperfections in the office furniture, visible paint splatters from one of the walls being recently repainted, and manufacturing details in the window frame behind the bed. Nothing pointed to this kid. But after integrating into the offender's personal and online life and into his inner circle of friends, we finally found Simon. But we didn't only find Simon, we found so much more. Law enforcement investigators were able to use the information provided by O.U.R, and they tracked down the exact window frame and the bedroom and the same paint splatter on the floor and the same computer desk. Actually, they found the exact room where Simon was sexually abused when he was 6 years old. They found not only Simon, but over 50 other local children that were systematically befriended, groomed, and sexually abused, not only by the offender who abused Simon, but many people with the offender's inner circle of friends. Simon's abuser is sitting in prison as we speak, and 50 more victims have been identified. So we're going to pause, and Andrea is going to now share her screen.
Great. Thank you, thank you, Janet. Thank you very much for that, for the 3 forms of human trafficking. Let me share my screen now to continue the presentation. Okay. Let me know if you see it.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So the 4th form of human trafficking is forced marriage. No, hold on. It's not going to the next. Oh, there it is. There it is. And some statistics for forced marriage state at any given time in 2016, an estimated 15.4 million people were in forced marriage, according to the International Labor Association. So let me tell you, let me illustrate this as I tell you the true story of Alina, who was rescued from forced marriage and trafficking. Alina is 14 years old, and she grew up in a family of 6 in South Asia. Her family owned some land, but it was definitely not enough to feed the entire family for the entire year, which left them very poor and often very, very hungry. Alina had never been to school because of her family's poor economic situation. One day, she began walking to her sister's house, but in the middle of the road, she was approached by a few boys who pulled her inside a nearby house. Forcing and pulling from a road to a nearby house, according to her, is very common in her village. In their culture, when girls are pulled into a boy's house, it is considered forced marriage automatically. Alina kept denying the marriage. However, the villagers kept telling her, "You have to face it. You need to accept it. You will need to get married." Alina was just 14 and she was forced into marriage. Her husband was obviously unemployed and was alcoholic. He beat her daily, repeatedly. Her father-in-law and mother-in-law also would beat her after consumption of alcohol. A trafficker, of course, there's always a trafficker, in the village knew what Alina was going through, what an unhappy marriage she had, and that she was facing physical abuse. So he decided to take advantage of the situation and he convinced her to run away from her house. Alina's family, knowing that she was missing, contacted law enforcement immediately and O.U.R.'s aftercare partners to help because she was obviously missing. The investigation began and they were able to find Alina just as the trafficker was transferring her to a nearby country. She was rescued just in time, thankfully. And as Alina begins her healing process from the trauma that she faced, she's living in an O.U.R. funded aftercare home for the time being. She's receiving professional counseling, food, clothing, and her health needs are being addressed. She mentions that she's in the process of starting school, which is making her so, so happy. She even mentioned, now I'm living the life which I wanted to live since the beginning. I always wanted to go to school and continue my education. I want to become a successful person in life. I can do it, and I feel like I'm living my dream. Alina's story, thankfully, has a happy ending. Although, well, her story is really not over yet because she's quite young and she has a promising life ahead of her, and we're sure she'll be very successful in her life. Unfortunately, she is one of very few that gets saved or is able to escape a forced marriage, since there are an estimate of 15.4 million people forced into marriage. Forced labor, also known as domestic servitude. And here are the statistics. This is the fifth form of human trafficking. And at any given time in 2016, it is estimated that 24.9 people were forced into labor, according to the International Labor Association. Children who are victims of labor exploitation are most commonly forced to beg, undertake domestic work, or work in the hospitality sector. So what does it look like to be trafficked for domestic servitude? Well, let me share the story of Mackenzie with you. Mackenzie, a young girl, finds an ad on social media for a high-paying work abroad. She applies, she is hired, and receives trust from her employer. Everything is quick and easy. She flies to the Mediterranean, and upon arrival, the employment agency takes her passport. She is forced to work 16 to 18 hours a day with very little to no food. She starts to break dishes because of the lack of energy. She is beaten repeatedly and she's not allowed to leave. Mackenzie realizes the gravity of her situation when the lady of the house tells her that she was purchased. There's a language barrier. She only speaks English. She holds back tears as she's being yelled in a foreign language. She is raped by the guest of the house repeatedly. Physical and sexual exploitation worsens. She cannot contact her family or anyone for help. Mackenzie finally escapes to live on the streets, but she is arrested for not having her passports or any documentation with her. Her employer lies and tells the police that she has committed a crime. She has no rights or legal representation in a foreign country. One day, while in jail, in-country O.U.R. aftercare contractors visit the jail and discovers Mackenzie. Aftercare provides her with food, hygiene products, and works out the paperwork that is needed with the police to get her release. Mackenzie receives notice that she can fly home finally. O.U.R. buys her the ticket to fly home, and the police drive her to the airport while aftercare contractors meet her to ensure that she is safe. O.U.R aftercare partners meet her in her home country to escort her to safety. They assess if she has a home that she can go to or if she will need to go to a safe house, but she finally reunites with her family. Aftercare partners provide individual follow-up care and vocational training. And after graduating from her 9-month program, Mackenzie receives a certificate and begins teaching at a preschool. That is just one example of what domestic servitude can look like. So we have domestic servitude, and we also have forced child labor. It is important to note that children around the world are routinely engaged in paid and unpaid forms of work that are not necessarily harmful to them. However, they are classified as child laborers when they're either too young to work or are involved in dangerous and hazardous activities that may compromise their physical, mental, social, and educational development. And in the least developed countries, slightly more than 1 in 4 children ages about 5 to 17 are engaged in labor that is considered detrimental to their health and development. And as the UNICEF chart shows us here, we see a high percentage of child labor in the agriculture industry with 71%, followed by 17% in the service industry and 12% in manual labor. The 6th form of sex trafficking is adult sex trafficking. The statistics show that an estimated 4.8 million people are trapped in forced sexual exploitation globally. Almost half of male victims were recruited by an acquaintance, whereas over a quarter of females were recruited by an intimate partner and over a third by a family member or relative. So what does trafficking look like in America? There is an idea and a notion out there that trafficking does not exist in America because we don't see it often or meet the survivors. But that is the furthest from the truth. Trafficking in America is often overlooked, although a lot of trafficking trades have moved online with the pandemic. It is not visible. I'll share some stories to illustrate what trafficking looks like in our own country and where it happens. For example, there's the 40-year-old woman who gets trafficked by her husband. An American woman has been married to her husband for 19 years when he forced her into sex trafficking. They were in a low-income situation, and one day he told her that she needed to sell herself on the streets in order to pay their rent. He was both physically and verbally abusive. He locked her out of the house and said that she would not be allowed back in unless she brought money to pay the rent. It broke her heart. She didn't understand why her husband was telling her to do this. She was so confused why this man who had told her he loved her for 19 years all of a sudden is asking her pretty much to prostitute herself. She was extremely heartbroken. She went to the streets. When she made enough money, she brought it back to him. He called her horrible names and told her to get back out there to make more money as what she had brought was not enough. There's the story of the mom who sells her 13-year-old daughter while she lives in a $1 million home. This woman lived in a very wealthy community. She was sexually abused as a child and felt that it was part of life. So she sold her 13-year-old daughter for money. When she was asked by the police why she sold her child, she explained, that's because she was sexually abused as a child. She just has to be okay with it. Or the mom who sells her 3 teenage daughters for $50 as a package deal. This woman put up an ad on Craigslist to sell her 3 teenage daughters aged 13, 14, and 16. She charged $50 for 1 hour. 3 men would come to her house, pay her $50, and rape her daughters while she left for the hour. She would then return after the hour was over. The 3 daughters' performance in school dropped significantly. Their self-esteem and confidence also changed and dropped. The 16-year-old daughter attempted suicide multiple times, and upon further investigation, the authorities found out what was going on in the home and arrested the mother and rescued the children. So we hear these stories. So what now? Although sex trafficking can involve family members exploiting children, there are many other ways it could happen. Those who run away can be picked up by traffickers within 24 to 48 hours of being on the streets. The internet has also become a space for children to be sold and bought. It is pretty much a marketplace for our children. The US is estimated to host 37% of child pornography sites, putting us in the number 2 spot in the world. In addition to online exploitation, it is estimated that 10,000 children are being smuggled across the borders to be exploited each year. Folks, it's time to break the chains. O.U.R is extremely grateful for the dedicated men and women in law enforcement who brave the rigors of battling human trafficking and child exploitation every day in America and all over the world. Sex trafficking is happening in our own backyards, but we have the power to stop it. We cannot give up hope. There are many ways for you to raise your voice in the fight against human trafficking. Educate yourself on the places that this is happening. Know the signs and how trafficking happens. After reading this, you may want to put on your phone or memorize the human trafficking hotline, which we will show later on. Visit their website and read the resources and studies available for each individual state. Spread awareness of this issue in your communities to protect our children. And how to report human trafficking? Well, there's a couple of ways. If you know that human trafficking is happening, if you are present, definitely law enforcement is the first number that needs to be called, 911. If you suspect of human trafficking or are exposed to child sex abuse material, CSAM, definitely reach out to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is 888-373-7888, and the text number is there as well. So we encourage everyone to record this number on their phone, on their cell phone, in case you come in contact with this type of situation. And what are some ways that you can help? And here are some ways to get involved. Definitely educate yourself. Take our Human Trafficking 101 course, Know the Signs, at the OURrescue.org page. Memorize the human trafficking hotline, which we shared before, and we will towards the end of the presentation. Watch some of or many of the documentaries from O.U.R. One of the famous ones is Operation Toussaint, and sponsor a screening either at your local library or any other place. Sometimes folks host screenings at the park to bring awareness. Donate to this cause. There are several ways that we can do that. Get e-alert of what's going on related to human trafficking in your own communities. And for the children that are interested in bringing awareness to their community and school, we have what is called the Students Against Trafficking Clubs, where they can create a club and bring awareness of human trafficking to their student body as well as the staff. And also to donate, shop at our O.U.R store for swag. And as I said, ways you can help, well, you can memorize the human trafficking hotline or put it in your phone in case you ever come in contact with a situation like this. And again, educate yourself. Here we have some resources. We'll share more later in the presentation. Slaveryfootprint.org, Traffic Cam, Polaris Projects. These are great resources where you can learn more about human trafficking. These are other online resources, such as Love 146, Polaris Project, which I just mentioned, and many other websites that provide, again, great resources on the topic. And here is the Operation Underground Railroad promise, and this is how it goes. To the children who we pray for daily, we say, your long night is coming to an end. Hold on, we're on our way. And to those captors and perpetrators, even you monsters who dare offend God's precious children, we declare to you, be afraid, we are coming for you. And that concludes our presentation. If you have any questions, you can definitely you can type it on the chat, or you can unmute yourself. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions, anything you would like to know, any additional information. And QR code, it's to the link for our survey. So if you could just scan it with your camera and let us know how helpful this this presentation was, what additional topics you would like us to present on, we encourage you to please do so.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrea.
Sure. And here are some ways how we can get connected: through Instagram, through Facebook, the Operation Underground Railroad YouTube video, TikTok. So many ways that we can stay connected.